In the winter of 1873, in the tight-knit German quarter of Milwaukee, a silent child whispered truths no one was ready to hear. Emma Richter was not like other children. While other 11-year-olds were playing games, whispering secrets, or daydreaming about simpler things, Emma was watching. Always watching. She sat near the window of her family's modest home with a leather-bound notebook on her lap and a sharpened pencil between her fingers, scribbling numbers, dates, steps, and patterns. Her eyes were large, still, and unsettlingly calm. She rarely spoke unless spoken to. When she did speak, her voice was soft and measured, like someone reporting facts from a weather almanac. But her words had an eerie way of coming true. She could tell you the exact date and day of the week any historical event occurred. She could repeat full conversations she'd overheard in passing, word for word. She could predict down to the minute when someone would arrive, what they would say, and how they would react. At first, the neighbors saw her as gifted. Ein Jesugnetskind, they said, a blessed child. Her mother, Greta Richter, shyly accepted the compliments. Her father, Adalbert, a stoic former sea cook, treated Emma with a mix of awe and confusion. They had emigrated from Bavaria 5 years earlier, and Emma had been a frail baby, born 2 months early aboard a storm-tossed ship on the Atlantic. The ship's doctors said she wouldn't survive the night. But she had. And from that first day, Emma had quietly defied every assumption about her. She learned to speak in complete sentences before her 2nd birthday. She could read German and English by age 4. By age 6, she was correcting the arithmetic mistakes in her father's ledger book. But no one truly paid attention until she began predicting events. It started subtly. She would mention, while peeling potatoes with her mother, that Mr. Newman would arrive late to church because his cartwheel was loose. The next day, that's exactly what happened. Or she would murmur at the dinner table, "There will be one extra guest at the Muller house tomorrow, someone tall who dislikes onions," and the following evening, a distant cousin no one expected arrived unexpectedly for supper and quietly picked onions out of a stew. These things were strange, but harmless. People called it intuition or sharp memory. But that changed when she made her first deadly prediction. On a bitter January morning, while the stove crackled and frost etched itself on the window, Emma turned to her mother and said, plainly, "Mr. Dietrich will die today, at 2:14 p.m. Her mother dropped the bowl of dough she was kneading. "What did you say?" Emma didn't blink. "He drinks too much. His liver is too swollen. He slipped and coughed at 6:41 this morning. He will go to the brewery anyway. He will fall down the back stairs after lunch. 2:14. Her father scolded her. "Don't speak like that. That's not something a child says." Emma simply nodded and returned to her notes. That afternoon, the news hit the neighborhood like a thunderclap. Mr. Dietrich had fallen to his death at exactly 2:14 p.m. behind the Lowenstein Brewery. The town chalked it up to drink and poor luck. But Emma's parents were shaken to their core. They asked her, quietly, how she had known. She explained her method, his daily drinking habits, the uneven steps, his shift schedule, his cough, his unsteady gait, her own previous observations. It was clinical. It was exact. It was terrifying. From that day forward, the Richter family was treated differently. Some whispered that Emma was a prophet. Others, more darkly, called her Hexenkind, a witch child. Invitations to neighborhood gatherings dried up. Children crossed the street rather than pass her. Priests began muttering about unnatural knowledge and the dangers of welcoming the unknowable. But Emma didn't care. Or perhaps she didn't understand. She continued her work, filling notebook after notebook with calculations, many of them entirely logical, but all delivered with a chilling lack of emotion. To her, life was data. People were systems. Everything was observable, measurable, and, if you were smart enough, predictable. She wasn't being cruel when she described a neighbor's inevitable heart failure. She wasn't being malicious when she calculated that 2 brothers would fall out over an inheritance. She was simply telling the truth before it happened. But as her predictions became darker and more accurate, the town's fascination with Emma began turning to fear. The community was on edge. And Emma was only getting started. She didn't guess. She didn't gossip. She knew, with the cold precision of mathematics and the terrifying calm of someone who never lied. After Emma's eerily accurate prediction of Mr. Dietrich's death, the German community in Milwaukee began to look at her with different eyes. Her pale face, quiet demeanor, and unsettling calm had once been seen as signs of intelligence. Now they looked like warnings. Some called her brilliant. Others whispered darker names, seer, witch, demon child. But while the town whispered, Emma continued to observe. Her notebooks became more intricate, rows of columns, symbols, and what looked like codes. Her handwriting was neat, her lines straight. She organized people's behaviors as if they were variables in an equation. Morning routine, number of daily steps, tone of voice, changes in clothing, mood swings, inconsistencies in stories. She was watching everything. It wasn't long before she uncovered something that no child, no person, was supposed to know. In late February, Emma told her mother, matter-of-factly, that Mrs. Weber was having an affair with the town clerk, and that her husband would discover it next Thursday, at 3:17 p.m. Her mother slapped the dough hard against the counter and snapped, "That's an awful thing to say." Emma didn't argue. She just walked out of the kitchen and made a note in her book. On Thursday, just after 3 p.m., Mr. Weber returned home early. He had found a misfiled invoice and suspected the clerk of pocketing coins. What he found instead was the clerk's coat in his own foyer, and his wife in tears. The next day, Emma quietly updated her calculations. "I forgot to account for wind delay in his walking speed," she wrote. Otherwise, accurate. Word spread fast. Some blamed Emma for the scandal. Others began to fear she wanted things to go wrong. But the truth was simpler and far more unsettling. Emma wasn't causing these events. She was predicting them based on patterns no one else bothered to see. She tracked when people walked past her window. She timed their steps. She counted how long they spent in shops, how many times they cleared their throats, whether their hats were tilted differently than the day before. She noticed things no one else even realized they revealed. Once, she predicted a minor kitchen accident at the Muller household. "Their stovepipe will clog," she told her father, "and she'll pour too much water into the pan. It'll splash and burn her wrist." "How could you possibly know that?" he asked, disturbed. "She hasn't cleaned the pipe in 17 days, Emma said. "I saw her rub her shoulder yesterday. That means her left arm is tired. She'll use her right today and overpour. It's simple." It wasn't simple. It was terrifying. Emma's predictions turned increasingly private, more personal, and they often involved people's shame, secrets, or sins. She predicted that a young man would steal from his employer and spend the money on gambling. That prediction came true. She stated that a woman would fake an illness to avoid a family dinner, down to the type of lie she would tell and the hour she'd tell it. Again, she was right. No one could figure out how. Eventually, people stopped visiting the Richters entirely. Children weren't allowed to play outside when Emma was near. Doors were closed faster. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Everyone feared that Emma was watching them, tracking them, learning something they didn't want known. And they were right. Emma was creating profiles on everyone within 10 blocks. Her journals held crude maps of homes and alleyways, records of who delivered what on which day, and how long each visit lasted. She measured pauses in conversation, foot traffic, and even emotional response patterns. She was becoming more than just an intelligent child. She was turning into something unervingly precise. The pastor, who once praised her gift, now claimed that the devil works in numbers, too. He cautioned the congregation against sinful curiosity. But he had a secret of his own, and Emma knew it. She had seen him emerge late from the cellar of the baker's home, and had tracked the timing of his meetings ever since. Emma didn't confront him. She didn't judge. She simply documented, calmly, without emotion, like a scientist watching ants march across a windowsill. But Emma was no longer seen as a child. She was something else now. A mirror the town didn't want to look into. She didn't threaten anyone. She didn't speak unless spoken to. But every time her family walked through town, there was a quiet dread, like standing beside someone who could see your thoughts and would write them down. and no one knew what would happen if that notebook ever fell into the wrong hands. By the time the flames lit up the sky, no one asked how she knew. They only asked if she'd made it happen. Emma Richter was now the most feared child in Milwaukee's German Quarter. She never cursed, never yelled, never misbehaved. But her presence made grown men uneasy. She didn't speak with malice, but with an unnerving detachment that made people question whether she was truly human, or something else entirely. She didn't predict joy. She never foresaw weddings, births, or blessings. Her calculations revealed only discomfort, betrayal, and death. And then came the fire. It began with a statement she made over breakfast, 3 days before it happened. While her father sliced bread and her mother stirred milk over the stove, Emma quietly said, "There will be a fire at Mr. Zimmerman's on Thursday. It will begin at 8:47 p.m. He will die. The flames will spread east. 3 houses will be damaged." Her mother froze mid-stir. Her father stopped cutting. "Emma, stop that," he said sharply, louder than he intended. Emma blinked. "You asked what I was calculating." Adalbert said nothing more. Greta quietly wept into a dish rag. But her words hung in the air like smoke before it forms. Her father, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or panic, decided to do what most desperate men do. He tried to stop it. That afternoon, he warned Mr. Zimmerman about a possible chimney issue. Zimmerman brushed it off. "The girl again," he said with a snort. "She scares my wife half to death. Tell her to stay inside and stop counting people's shadows." But Adalbert tried again the next day, and the next. He even sent word to the church, asking them to encourage neighbors to check their homes. No one took it seriously. Some accused him of feeding Emma's delusions. Others feared associating with him would bring bad luck, or worse, attract her scrutiny. Thursday came. At 8:47 p.m., a spark from a neglected stovepipe ignited a wooden beam in Zimmerman's attic. The fire grew fast, fed by dry timbers and high wind. Within minutes, flames burst through the roof. Zimmerman never made it out. His wife screamed from the yard, too late to save him. The fire spread just as Emma said it would, eastward, catching on the wooden eaves of the neighboring houses. 3 homes were destroyed. Several people were injured. By morning, the smell of smoke still lingered in the snow-covered streets, and Emma's name was on everyone's lips. This time, they didn't dismiss it as coincidence. They began to suspect that her knowledge wasn't passive, that she might be the cause. After all, if she could see the future, couldn't she influence it? Couldn't she steer people, or disasters, toward her predictions? A rumor began that Emma was a witch in a child's body. Another rumor claimed her notebooks were written in the language of demons, filled with equations meant to control fate. One woman swore she saw Emma smiling as the fire burned, though this was later proven false. Emma had not left the house that night. She had simply recorded the event, adjusting her notes for wind velocity and temperature variance. Still, the damage was done. The Richters became outcasts overnight. Greta stopped attending church. Adalbert's job at the docks was quietly reassigned. Bread deliveries stopped arriving. Children crossed the street when Emma walked by, some throwing pebbles or muttering prayers. One man accused the family of bringing a curse to Milwaukee. Another said Emma's soul must have been twisted at sea when she was born too early. Caught between heaven and hell, he whispered. And through it all, Emma watched. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She simply observed the changes, recorded reactions, and moved on to her next set of variables. But her father was unraveling. He watched his wife fade into depression, watched neighbors turn their backs, watched Emma's notebooks fill with colder and more complex observations. He loved his daughter, but he feared her more than he dared admit. One night, he opened one of her journals. The pages were filled with timelines, behavioral patterns, and predicted emotional outcomes for everyone on their street. Each person had a percentage next to their name, likelihood of conflict, divorce, injury, suicide. Some names were crossed out. One entry simply read, Zimmerman, 0% survival if Thursday, 8:47 p.m. proceeds without intervention. Adalbert closed the book and wept. His child wasn't a monster. She was a mirror, one that showed the truth without mercy. And no one in town was ready to look. But things were about to get worse. Because Emma was tracking something even more dangerous than death. She was watching theft, power, and corruption. And what she found next would shake the town's foundation to its core. When grown men hide behind lies, it takes a child who sees patterns, not politics, to tear the curtain down. By March of 1873, Emma Richter's name was spoken only in whispers, if at all. Her predictions had gone from strange to prophetic to terrifying, and the town no longer viewed her as a gifted child, but as a haunting presence. People didn't just avoid her, they feared her. Yet even as the community closed its doors, Emma kept opening her notebooks. She had moved beyond the people on her street. Her new subject was the town itself. Her father, Adelbert, now unemployed and increasingly anxious, noticed that Emma's drawings were changing. Gone were the small grids tracking neighbors' habits. Now her notebooks contained maps of delivery routes, brewery schedules, river dock logs, and shifts of laborers at key warehouses. "What are you doing?" he asked one night, after noticing a detailed diagram of the Lowenstein brewery and 3 surrounding warehouses, each labeled with strange symbols. Emma looked up, following the theft. Adelbert blinked. "What theft?" Emma turned her book toward him. Her handwriting was impossibly neat, the ink crisp against the yellowing page. "They're stealing money, maybe barrels. 7 men. One is Mayor Keller's cousin. They meet every 11th night. It began 13 months ago. I can't prove it, but I can see it." Adelbert laughed nervously. "Emma, no one would rob the brewery. It feeds half the quarter." She looked at him blankly. "And that's why no one is watching." What followed was the most disturbing pattern Emma had ever recorded. Over the previous year, she'd noticed that deliveries arriving at the brewery were being undercounted on the receiving end. She observed inconsistencies in inventory, saw laborers working secret night shifts not listed on the schedules, and even watched one man, Ernst Kellner, a respected foreman, depositing envelopes at a lawyer's office after hours. The patterns didn't lie. The math didn't lie. And Emma never guessed. She believed that over $47,000 worth of goods, barrels of grain, hops, finished beer, had been siphoned off and resold through a back-channel distribution network. She believed several men were involved, a city treasurer, 2 brewery managers, a riverboat captain, and even a priest who signed off on the fake donations. Adelbert, terrified, pleaded with her to stop digging. "These are powerful people, Emma. If they find out, they already suspect," she said. "Kellner looked at me yesterday. Not like before." His eyes paused. His footstep changed. "You're imagining it." "No," she said. "They're going to try something. 72 hours. Maybe less." Adelbert didn't sleep that night. And by morning, the decision was made. They couldn't stay. Not now. Not after what she'd uncovered. But before they fled, Emma did something extraordinary. She wrote a 15-page report, outlining everything. Names, dates, missing barrels, false shipment weights, altered ledgers, secret meetings. She even included predictions, what each man would do if cornered, who would confess, who would turn violent, who would try to disappear. She handed it to Dr. Linden, a family friend who had quietly believed in her from the beginning. "Keep this safe," she said. "In 1 year, it will make sense." Then, in the dark of night, the Richters disappeared. Some said they went to Minnesota. Others claimed they returned to Germany. No one truly knew. But 2 things were certain. Emma's final report was real, and everything she predicted in it came true. 3 months after their departure, city accountants discovered a massive deficit in the brewery's municipal records. A quiet investigation ensued. Within weeks, 2 men were arrested and 4 more fled the state. One, Ernst Kellner, was found dead in the river, assumed to be suicide, though the note he left behind simply read, "She knew. The girl knew. I saw it in her eyes." Dr. Linden, shaken but resolute, handed the full report to the police. Although many details were redacted in official papers, whispers circulated that a child had uncovered it all. A child who saw patterns in sin. The town never spoke Emma's name again, not publicly. But the brewery lost its luster. Some blamed the scandal. Others said the buildings never quite felt clean after that. One employee claimed the walls remembered her. Delivery men refused to work after dark. Superstitions grew. But deep down everyone knew this wasn't magic. Emma hadn't cursed anyone. She'd simply paid attention. Some children vanish because they're taken. Others vanish because the world has no place to hold them. The Richter family disappeared from Milwaukee in May 1873, as quietly as they had once arrived. No farewell, no announcement, just an empty house one morning, the curtains drawn and the stove cold. For a neighborhood that once feared Emma's gaze, their departure brought a strange sense of relief. But for those who looked closer, it also left behind a deep, unsettling void. Officially, the Richters told a few they were returning to Germany. Immigration documents, however, tell a different story. They resurfaced briefly in New Ulm, Minnesota, a small town with a familiar German population and a quiet, unassuming pace of life. It was the perfect place to hide in plain sight. But the family wasn't the same. Adalbert, once proud and composed, had grown withdrawn and sickly. Greta rarely left the house. And Emma, well, Emma was still Emma. Older now, but no less intense. She resumed her careful routines, watching, recording, calculating. The quiet streets of New Ulm became a new testing ground. Different people, different rhythms. But the same rules applied. People were predictable, if you were paying close enough attention. It was here, in Minnesota, that Emma caught the attention of Professor August Wilhelm, a mathematics instructor at a local teacher's college. He met Emma at a public lecture, where she interrupted a speaker's flawed equation mid-sentence and calmly corrected the entire sequence, without notes. At first, the professor thought she was a prodigy. But the more he studied her, the more he realized that Emma wasn't just doing math. She was reading human behavior like a language, breaking it into variables, patterns, and probabilities. He wrote in his private diary, "She is not merely solving for X. She is solving for us, for who we are and what we will do. I have never met a mind like hers, quiet, piercing, and utterly without ego. She doesn't try to be right. She simply is." Professor Wilhelm began tutoring her privately, recording their sessions in the hopes of one day writing a paper. But Emma refused interviews, attention, or any effort to publish her work. She showed no interest in acclaim or money. When asked what she wanted, she replied only, "I want to understand why people do what they hate, hide what they love, and lie about who they are." She worked relentlessly. Her notebooks multiplied. But unlike in Milwaukee, where she focused on crimes and personal disasters, her New Ulm journals reflected something more philosophical: futures. She began predicting entire life arcs, marriages, careers, relocations. She analyzed emotional decline, cognitive aging, likelihood of confession before death. Her equations weren't just statistical, they were personal. Disturbingly so. Then, just as before, she vanished again. It happened sometime in the autumn of 1874. The professor received no letter. One day, she simply stopped appearing at their lessons. Her family's home was empty. The landlord claimed they had moved suddenly in the night. No forwarding address. No destination. Gone. All that remained was Emma's final notebook, left with Dr. Linden in a sealed envelope marked "Do not open until I'm forgotten." Inside were pages of deeply coded calculations, summaries of her observations, and chilling statements about people she had never met and would never meet. Grief has shape. Regret has volume. Truth has a half-life. I am only measuring it. One section of the journal detailed predictions of geopolitical conflict, rising industrial unrest, and patterns of mass behavior that wouldn't become relevant until the 20th century. Another section was titled simply, "Silence, the Final Pattern."